My parents gave away the house I bought for them to my sister, so I stopped paying the mortgage, and the house was auctioned by the bank. I'm a 28-year-old man, and I've been paying the mortgage on a house I bought for my parents, only to discover they gave it to my 25-year-old sister. Worse yet, they didn't even bother to tell me. I always knew my parents loved my sister more than me, but I never imagined it would come to this point. My parents have a toxic and deep love for my sister, but unfortunately they have nothing for me. As the older of two siblings, they always had higher expectations for me, while I was instilled with a sense of responsibility from an early age. My younger sister Perry was treated like a princess. Not exactly like a princess because my parents don't have many resources, but she always got what she wanted. My parents had no academic expectations for her. She could explore her passions and hobbies while I was immersed in studies. It was always like this. My parents weren't exactly subtle about their expectations toward me. They made it clear that I should build a solid career and couldn't fail in my studies. After I graduated from high school, my parents took out loans and spent their savings to pay for my technical school. I suggested that instead of liquidating their savings, they confirm the loan for my education and I would pay it after getting a job. My parents opposed the loan because of the high interest rates. They said I would have to pay 1.5 times the principal amount. I was too young to understand the complexities of a loan. I thought if my parents said it, it must be correct. I was barely 18 then. Little did I know they were saving me from the burden of a loan only to take advantage of me later. Shortly after finishing college, I got a good job in the tech sector, exactly what they wanted for me. They were undoubtedly proud of me, but I always felt like some kind of commodity, as if they had invested in me expecting to get something in return. They never missed an opportunity to say, "We sacrificed so much for you. Don't forget it. Don't forget your roots. Don't forget where you come from." At first, it seemed harmless. I felt they just wanted to keep me humble, but over time I realized it was emotional manipulation. Emotional blackmail is their specialty. As I started working, the pressure increased. Every time I visited them, my dad would hint at how I shouldn't forget that he spent his savings to pay for my college and how I should work hard to repay their sacrifices. I knew my parents needed a house. They had been saving for many years, but spent that money on my education. I remember I had just started my career, hadn't even completed a year working, when I went home for vacation. While we were having dinner, my father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "We did our part by paying for your education. Now it's your turn. You should plan soon to buy a house for us. We can't live renting forever, right?" I felt a knot in my stomach when he said that. I knew they expected me to buy them a house, but not so soon. I hadn't even completed a year at my job. I still shared an apartment with 2 roommates because I couldn't afford one for myself alone, and my parents were already asking me to buy them a house. "Like, what the hell?" I protested. "Dad, I just started my job. I can't even pay rent for an apartment for myself. How do you expect such a big financial commitment from me?" He said he wasn't asking for it immediately, but was planting the idea in my head so I could plan it and work hard to achieve it. My mother intervened with a deceptively sweet voice. "We paid for your college. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are now. Think of it as paying us back." I didn't have the heart to argue. They weren't wrong. I was where I was thanks to their sacrifices. But sometimes their sermons were too much to bear, and I wanted to scream, "Who asked you to do it for me?" But I didn't have the courage to confront my parents. I kept a fair distance from them, and only answered their calls when it was urgent. Visiting them was out of the question after that conversation at the table. I used my work as an excuse to avoid them. However, the obligation to buy them a house lived permanently in my head. So after 5 years of saving and working hard, I gave in. I bought a house for my parents, a modest and beautiful house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't extravagant, but it was comfortable. Everything seemed to be fine. I thought it was the least I could do for my parents after everything they had done for me. I was paying the mortgage for 3 years. I even paid a little more to pay it off early. I have other plans in life. I want to buy my own house, travel, start a family, etc. I can't have this loan indefinitely. After buying them the house, my parents stopped bothering me about how they helped me. They proudly showed it to their friends and family, boasting that their investment had paid off. It didn't bother me, but it also didn't close the gap between us. I continued to keep my distance and didn't visit them frequently. 2 days ago, I decided to visit my parents after being away for work for months. I didn't warn them. I wanted to surprise them. But there was a surprise waiting for me. When I arrived at the house entrance, I saw Perry's car parked. I thought she was visiting, and I was happy about the idea of a family reunion. Perry had gotten married and moved when my parents were still living in the rented house, Years had passed since I last saw her at her wedding. I knocked on the door, and Perry answered in pajamas. I thought she would just be visiting for a short time. We greeted and hugged each other, and then she asked me, "What are you doing here?" I responded playfully, "I could ask you the same thing." I entered the house and asked her, "Where are Mom and Dad?" She sat on the couch and answered casually, "Oh, they moved." I was paralyzed. They moved? What do you mean they moved? This is their house. Perry shrugged as if it wasn't a big deal. Looks like they didn't tell you. Actually, they gave it to me. Now I live here. I felt like the ground was moving under my feet. They gave you the house? The house I've been paying for? Yes, she said indifferently, as if it made all the sense in the world. Mom and Dad said, I needed it more. You know, I'm planning to have a baby soon, and they thought I should have the house. I was stunned. I asked her where they were living now. She responded, they're renting an apartment on the other side of town, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I left without saying another word, my head full of anger. I drove directly to their new apartment, not caring if I arrived, unannounced. When my mother opened the door, I wasted no time and said, what the hell is going on? Perry just told me you gave her the house I bought, the house I've been paying for. Could you explain it? My mother had the audacity to smile as if it weren't a big deal. Calm down, honey, come in. We didn't think it would bother you. I entered but didn't bother to sit down. I wanted answers. Somehow my voice rose. You didn't think it would bother me? You gave away the house I bought without even talking to me. How could you think it wasn't important for me to know? My mother sighed as if I were the one being unreasonable. Well, we thought that since you're doing so well, you wouldn't mind. Perry is planning to have a baby now. Do you want your nephews to be born in a rented house and grow up in an unstable environment? Now that they have the house, they don't need to worry about rent. They can focus on other things, like their child's well-being. I exploded. I don't care where my nephews are born and raised. I don't mind them living in a rented house. We lived in one, I still live in a rental. Besides, it's not my problem to think about them. It's Perry and her husband's problem. If they want stability, let him get a better job. Hearing the commotion, my dad came out of the room and said, what's all this fuss about? She needs financial security. We had to give her the house. She didn't have the same opportunities as you. We didn't pay for her college, so she deserves this house. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's what parents have. They can say anything without being confronted. I responded, you didn't pay for her college because she never went to college. She dropped out of high school, remember? They refused to understand the gravity of what they had done. They kept saying, you're successful. You can buy yourself another house. Of course I will, but it will be for me, not for you. I didn't even know how to respond. I felt like the world was falling apart on me. I couldn't understand their logic. I simply left their apartment furious. I checked into a hotel and have been here since then. I really don't know what to do. Can't continue paying the mortgage after knowing the truth. But dealing with the situation is a real challenge. I know my parents can't afford the mortgage, and there's no doubt my sister couldn't either. This drama occurred on Friday, and today is Sunday. I have my return flight on Tuesday. At first I thought about booking an immediate flight and leaving, but when I calmed down, I realized I had other things to do here. I wanted to check how much was left on the loan since I've been paying more than normal, so I think I'm ahead on payments. Before my visit, I asked my dad about the mortgage balance. He said he had to check with his bank manager. I sent him a text to take me to the bank tomorrow to get more details about the pending balance. Although I don't want to continue paying the mortgage, I want to know the current status. There's more to this story, and I'm literally shaking as I write this. We just returned from the bank, and what I discovered left me shocked. The extra money I was paying toward the mortgage never reached the bank. My father only paid the actual mortgage and used the extra money for his own expenses, more specifically, to pay the rent on his apartment. I've been living so frugally all these years below my means to save a little more and pay off the mortgage early. When the manager showed me the monthly deposits, I told him there must be a mistake, because we were paying almost a third more than the mortgage amount. I even opened my transaction history to show how much money I was sending my father each month. Then my dad intervened and said, the manager's data is correct. We only paid what corresponded to the mortgage. At first, I thought my dad was confused, that he didn't understand the situation. But then he took me by the arm and said, the records are correct. Let's talk about this later. I felt another blow. I was dizzy, anticipating another betrayal. I sat stunned while finishing the meeting where the manager gave us details about the pending mortgage balance and other options to merge loans, etc. I remained silent. As soon as the manager left us alone, my dad took me to a corner and asked me, "Why are we talking about the extra money?" "You sent it for the mortgage," I responded with fury. "Of course. What else would I send you extra money for? I told you the money was for the mortgage." What he told me next left me stunned. "I thought you were sending it for our expenses." "I used it to pay our rent." I stared at him and then sat down, burying my head in my hands. What do I do with my parents now? My dad sat next to me and asked me not to make a scene, saying it wasn't a big deal. I exploded. "It's not a big deal? You forced me to buy you a house and then gave it to Perry without even informing me. Plus, you used the extra mortgage money to pay your rent." Let me tell you, my father is not a man who stays quiet and accepts his son confronting him, especially in a public place. He responded angrily, "Don't you dare raise your voice at me. You didn't do me any favor by buying us the house. I spent all my savings to pay for your college. I don't have to explain to you what I do with that house. You sent me the money and I paid the mortgage on time. What's the problem if I use the extra to cover our rent? It's not like we were asking for more." I was furious with his words. "The extra was to pay off the mortgage early, not to finance your new apartment." I left the bank furious. As I walked down the street, I could hear my father shouting my name, but I didn't look back. I kept walking to the subway station. My mother called me 4 or 5 times and also sent me a text asking me to come home so we could sit down and discuss the matter. I didn't respond. I don't want to discuss anything. I've already made a decision, and I'm going to do what I think is right. Enough of their toxicity. Sorry for the spelling and grammar errors in my last update. I was shaking with anger. Then I had to edit it to make it readable. I also didn't answer some of the common questions I received in the comments, so let me address them first. Some asked if my parents are Asian. No, we're not. Let me debunk that myth. Asians aren't the only community whose parents pressure their children to the extreme. I don't want to reveal my ethnic origin, sorry. They also asked who the loan holder was. Well, the loan was in my father's name. I didn't co-sign because I wanted to buy a new car and maybe a house in a few years, and being associated with this loan would have affected my future loans. Now I'm glad about that decision because it facilitated the execution of my plan. Moving on to the update, the next day I returned to my normal life. A month passed and I didn't send my father the mortgage money. As expected, he tried to contact me on the first day of the month, only to discover I had blocked him. I didn't just block him, I also blocked my mother, my sister, and her husband. I don't want more drama in my life. I made my decision. I stopped paying the mortgage. I wasn't going to let them continue manipulating me. If my parents wanted to give the house to Perry, fine. Let her handle the payments. Let her be responsible. When my parents realized what I had done, they went crazy. I received some calls and voicemails from unknown numbers. Maybe they used their friends' numbers. I don't know. It was something like, "You can't just stop paying. We don't have money to cover the mortgage." I laughed inside. Well, it's no longer my problem. I blocked those numbers too, but that wasn't all. 3 days later, I found my father at my apartment door when I returned from work. He was furious and told me, "You can't just leave like that. You owe us. We paid for your college. We made you who you are." I responded immediately, "I've already paid you back. Do you realize how much I've spent on that mortgage? It's more than what you paid for my college tuition. I don't owe you anything." He called me ungrateful, but I cut him off saying, "No, you can no longer make me feel guilty. I've done more than enough. I'm not going to pay for the house, the rent, or anything else. You made your decision, now face the consequences. You treated me like a commodity you invested in by sending me to college, and now you want to milk this cow for life. I'm not a commodity." I left the hallway and drove away in my car. I didn't go into my apartment because I knew he would have followed me inside, and I wasn't ready to continue with the drama. When I returned later that night, he was already gone. My mother tried to call me several more times with new numbers, leaving desperate voicemails. Even Perry left me a long message with another number saying she needed the house for her future family and that I was being selfish by not helping. Selfish? Me? The one who has been paying for everything while she did nothing? I didn't give in to any of their manipulations. I'm fed up with them. I've cut ties completely. The house was sold at auction, and Perry was forced to move out. As I mentioned before, Perry couldn't afford to pay the mortgage, and my parents were already financially drowning paying rent on their apartment. They couldn't handle the mortgage, rent, and household expenses. When I stopped making payments, I knew this would happen. It was just a matter of time. After almost a year, I found out the house had been sold. My parents did everything possible to save it, using their savings and liquidating their retirement money, but they couldn't. Things also became tense between Perry and my parents during this time. When they were struggling to pay the mortgage, they asked Perry and her husband to contribute 50%, but she refused, saying the house was a gift for her, and they should assume complete payment of the mortgage. It was then that my parents realized the mistake they had made, but by that time it was too late. I think my parents did the right thing by letting the bank auction and sell the house instead of continuing to pay the mortgage and allowing Perry to continue living in it without doing anything. Part of the down payment and the monthly payments he had been making all these years. With tea, the house was auctioned and my dad recovered a considerable amount of money. He has more than enough to recover what he invested in me. I know it's my money, but I don't expect or want a penny of it. They're not going to give it back to me, and I have to let it go. At least now they can no longer say they did me a favor by paying my college tuition. I've already returned that favor, and with interest. Now I don't feel guilty about having pushed them out of my life. From what I've heard from my cousins and uncles, my parents have moved to a smaller apartment to reduce the cost of rent. They've also saved the money they received from the auction for their retirement. They've been telling everyone they don't want to depend on me in their old age and are working to secure themselves. They've also cut all financial support to Perry and told her she must manage on her own with her family. Yes, she tried to manipulate them again, saying they paid for my college tuition and secured my future, so they were also obligated to secure hers. However, now my parents have returned to reality and are not giving in to her demands. Well, I'm glad for them. Meanwhile, I've rented an apartment for myself. I'll finally have some privacy. I've also started saving to buy my own house, a place that will be mine and mine alone. It's not easy to distance yourself from family, but sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most are the ones who take advantage of you the most. It took me a long time to realize this, but I don't regret my decision. Family or not, I deserve better than being treated like a walking bank account. I've seen that many people continue with questions, so I'm going to clarify some points before getting into what has occurred recently. One of the most common questions has been how much my parents spent on my education and how much I've spent on the mortgage of the house that was supposedly for them. Well, although I don't have exact figures, I can say my education cost around $40,000. As for the mortgage, including the extra payments I sent to pay it off early, but which my parents used to pay their apartment rent, I've paid about $52,000. As you can see, I've paid the money back with interest. I no longer feel I owe them anything. Some people have also asked about Perry. I want to clarify that she hasn't been left homeless, as some suggested. She and her husband are living at her in-laws' house. So no, I'm not that bad brother who left his poor sister homeless. Besides, the house was never for her, but for my parents. Perry and her husband could very well have assumed the mortgage payments, but as always, they didn't want to make the effort. The house was in my parents' name, and they were the ones who decided to give it to Perry, so they were free to pay the rest. So there was nothing I could do, much less wanted to do for them. Now for the real update, my father has returned. Seems he has money for a plane ticket to visit me. Well, let me correct myself. To demand something from me, not to visit me. He came to ask me for more money. This time he wants me to buy them another house. After everything that happened with the first house, the one they gave to their favorite daughter, now they pretend I should buy them another one. He told me they deserve a house because they've made many sacrifices for us, their children. He always returns to the topic of college, reminding me of the great sacrifice of paying for my education, which of course never fails to come up in any conversation with my parents. And of course he mentioned that they gave a house to their daughter, as if that wasn't the height of irony considering the house was originally for them, not for her. According to him, they've already fulfilled their role as parents, so now they deserve their own house. I made it very clear that I'm absolutely not going to buy another house for them. The money I've been saving is to buy my own house, not to solve their problems again. I told them their opportunity to have a house was already wasted when they decided to give it to Perry, and they should go ask her to buy them a house now. I'd love to see what kind of response they'd get from her. My father stayed a couple of days in the city and asked me to think about it and talk again. However, I had a work trip those days, so I didn't talk to him again. Or rather, he couldn't talk to me because he hasn't had a way to contact me. I blocked his numbers, so he hasn't been able to reach me. When I returned to my apartment after the trip, he was no longer there, and since then, I haven't heard anything more from him. As for me, I'm about to reach my savings goal for the down payment on a house. I don't have much left, and if everything goes well, the next time I write here, I hope to be able to give the news that I'll finally be the owner of a modest place I can call my home. Here I am to tell you that I've been able to buy my own house. I still have work to do, like buying furniture and those things, but I finally have a roof over my head that I can call mine. I read all your comments and advice, and as many recommended, I haven't told anyone, nor have I even posted it on social media. I've only told a small group of friends who have no relationship with my parents or my family. They're friends I've made in this city, so there's no way the news will reach my parents. I don't want to risk them doing what I've read in other posts, like asking me for the house to give to my pregnant sister or something like that. Therefore, I'm being extremely careful with this information. I don't want to see myself in a mama bear type situation where they ask me for the house for the good of the family. I joke that I'd even like to have an electrified fence around the house to keep entitled parents at bay, but I really learned from Reddit that it's best to keep this information secret, at least until I can establish solid boundaries. Now, instead of advice on how to deal with parents like this, I come to ask for advice on something more pleasant: decorating my new home. If there's something I'm not good at, it's decorating. When I lived with roommates, there was always someone else who took care of that, and when I moved to a rented place, it was already furnished, so I never had to worry too much. But now that I have this empty space, a blank canvas, I feel a little intimidated. I don't want to ruin it and turn it into a place without personality or with bad taste.